Hello again. Now that you're getting started with the readings for the course, wanted to talk just a little bit with some background information as you get started. You notice, of course, that the first things I'm going to have you read are some old documents, the Articles of Confederation, then a number of the Federalist Paper entries, then a couple of chapters of the Jones book on the presidency. That has some nice background material. And finally, I'm going to ask you to read the Constitution and the amendments to the Constitution. I think out of all of this, the Federalist Paper entries, which are the longest part of the readings, you'll probably find those the most challenging. But hang in there. This is just archaic, late 19th century English, and so hang in there. Do your best. The Federalist entries aren't very long in and of themselves, but they're packed with a lot of useful and interesting information. Just by way of background here, we could do an entire course on the founding of the United States from about the 1750s through the Revolutionary War, the War for Independence. Now, if you remember from your high school civics, that War for Independence ran from 1775 to 1783, and just wanted to make a couple of points pertinent to that because this provides the context in which the materials you're reading were formulated. The 13 colonies that were part of the rebellion against Great Britain, the kind of core colonies, which would have included Massachusetts and New York and Virginia, several of them were very old by the time of the Revolutionary War, which means, of course, that there were long-standing traditions and political cultures already in place in these colonies, a rather fierce sense of independence on the part of each of these political communities. So there was not an interest early on in a kind of national sensibility here. This was a loose alliance of 13 colonies that rebelled against the British Empire, and you need to keep that in mind, especially as you take a look at the Articles of Confederation. You probably remember that there were continental congresses that were formulated with representatives from each of the 13 colonies to make decisions to sort of provide a national government structure during the war. The Second Continental Congress, in fact, produced the Articles of Confederation, and it took a number of years for those to be ratified and to go into effect. But there were problems with governance, national governance under the Articles almost from the outset. As you go ahead and read the Articles of Confederation, which were ratified fully in 1781, I think you'll see several interesting things. First of all, it's not described as a national government. It's described as a firm league of friendship among these states. There was really little more by way of structure here than a national legislature, a Congress, that was established to meet yearly. The states could select 2 to 7 delegates to choose for each legislature, each term of the legislature, and each of the delegates could serve a maximum of 3 years. Under the Articles, each state got 1 vote in matters of importance. Now, of course, what that meant is that even the smallest states with the fewest members of the population would have the same kind of representation as the largest states with the largest population and the most advanced economies. The Articles of Confederation severely limited the actions that the national government could take. The national government would be funded from taxes levied on the states, but there were a number of problems with this system, and let me just mention a couple of those. First of all, there was no executive, no chief executive, no executive power. There was not a president or any sort of agency specifically created by the Articles to carry out decisions of the legislature. I guess the assumption is that most of the legislative decisions would be carried out voluntarily by the states. You'll also notice that there was no judicial system, there was no court system, no way to resolve disputes among the states that might arise. There was a committee of the states that was created to consider problems and disagreements among the states, but that's different than a judicial structure. There were also severe limits in the Articles on the military, which was a particular problem for the post-war period. There was no national army or navy authorized by the Articles of Confederation. And there was no real long-term view of finance under this system. So Congress pledged to pay the debt, but what happens if Congress can't actually raise the money necessary to pay the debt? This actually turned out to be a much more serious problem even during the war than many of the drafters of the Articles imagined. So, following the war in particular, there were severe problems that resulted from these defects in the Articles of Confederation. And there are a couple of the Federalist Paper entries that go into detail about life under the Articles. And I just wanted to mention a couple of those specific problems there too. The states couldn't, the national government could not raise adequate revenue to pay off the war debts. There were British forts along the northern perimeter of the new nation. Britain had promised to evacuate those forts as part of the treaty to end the Revolutionary War, but they never followed through on that promise. And one of the reasons they didn't follow through on it was they said that the new nation had not adequately settled its part of the war debts. Access to the Mississippi was denied to the United States by Spain, which held that property at the time. The United States promised to pay back loyalists, many of whom had gone back to Great Britain after the war, but the new nation promised to pay off the property losses that many of those people had incurred at the outset of the revolution, and those debts were not paid off, which again was one of the reasons why the British left the troops in the forts. And then there was the large issue, given the constraints on a military, there was a large issue of what would happen if Great Britain decided to take up the fight again. There was a real possibility that Great Britain could have come back to fight once more, and the United States, with no standing army, would have again had to rely on state militias and other things that would have been difficult to control and manage. And finally, the issue of disagreements and even potentially war among the states kind of loomed large as it became clear that there were discrepancies of viewpoints and economic systems among the states. People began to see that there would be potentially warfare among the states, and the national government was not strong enough to deal with those problems.